When the odds are stacked against you, how do you find you're happy and go from surviving to thriving? When we come back, we will be talking to Vick of PF Warriors to find out how he thrives living around a terminal illness. Don't go away, we'll be right back. And welcome back. If you're just joining us, welcome to the Do Good Live show. I'm your host, Bridgetti Banda from Cape Town in South Africa. How do you find you're happy and go from surviving to thriving when you live around a terminal illness? In today's show, we're going to be talking to Vick of PF Warriors. But first, my co-host is Mary Elizabeth Jackson. She's a special needs and disabilities advocate and also the award-winning author of the Poolicious children's book series, who lives in Nashville in the USA. So do let us know where you are joining us from. Mary, good morning. How are you?
Oh, good morning. I'm great. How are you? Wow, that was a nice little ding, huh? That was like the alarm waking us up, right? That car. Anyways, I'm doing really well. How are you today?
I'm good. We're well into winter in South Africa. So I have I've warmed up because it's not very pleasant when you're trying to do anything and you're freezing your toes off. So winter, the goal is always to remain warm and well. And I know on your side you're in summer, so very different scenario.
Yeah, it's very, very hot. And last week we had a chance to go to where the beach, there was not many people, but with 90 plus degrees and just hot. And then now we have this, I know you've probably seen it, the whole sandstorm coming from the Saharas. And, it's all revelation, isn't it? It's like,
crazy.
It's so crazy.
But let's get into our show for today.
Yes.
We want to introduce Vick. So for many, the unintended consequences has not escaped them, especially our immunocompromised families and communities. And that's why we're wanting to talk to Vick of PF Warriors. He's a serial entrepreneur living with a terminal lung disease called Idiopathic Pulmonary Fibrosis. So let's get him on the show, shall we?
Yes.
Bill, good morning. So lovely to have you join us. I'm absolutely delighted to have you on the show. How are you today?
Absolutely sensational. Fantastic.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're both in the United States. So we got the US crazy going on and Bridgetti's got South African crazy going on, right?
Absolutely. And so I want to just say a warm welcome to our audience. If you're watching us on Facebook, YouTube, on LinkedIn Live, on Twitter, on Periscope, a warm welcome to you all. And please do join us in the comments. If you're watching this on the replay, also comment and let us know your thoughts. Bill, I want to jump right into it because we've only got 30 minutes. Could you tell us in your own word, what is idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis for those who don't know?
I kind of think of it as a ninja disease, Bridgetti. What I mean is it's a disease where by the time you know you have it and you're diagnosed, you're on your way to dying. And it's a rare disease, meaning there's less than 200,000 patients in the United States. It's a disease, and there's about 150,000 is a good fair number. And I say a good fair number because there's unfortunately, there's no true log of actual diagnosed patients. It's a lot of conjecture and drawing upon other sources. But those 150,000 patients all live with fibrosis. And fibrosis, which is kind of an aside, is 45% of all deaths in North America have a fibrotic component. It doesn't happen just to your lungs. It can happen to your liver. It can happen to your stomach, your kidneys, your gallbladder. So fibrosis is a kind of an insidious disease many don't know about. But what happens with the lungs, over time, your body is scarred, and the scarring doesn't really heal properly. And that scarring causes your lung tissue to become stiffer and thicker. So over time, it becomes difficult and eventually impossible to breathe and get oxygen into your body. So you die from lack of oxygen, which can be slow. It can be fast. I've had friends that have been diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis that, like me, I'm now 9 years post-diagnosis. I've got friends that are 11, 12 years post-diagnosis, but I've got others that are diagnosed and within a week or sometimes less days, they're dead. And it's a disease where there's no cure. The only stopping point in the disease at this point is a transplant. But when you think of that number of 150,000 people, only 2,000 people had a transplant last year. So the chances of getting a transplant are a celebration for all of us. At the same point, the number of patients living with the disease is in a constant state of churn. Because again, the averages, which I hate the word averages, but when you look at the numbers that are acute and accumulated, there's a lifespan for most patients of 3 to 5 years. And that lifespan is, it varies. Some people like me are active and live a full, rich life, even though I've got some accommodations to make. Others go from like racing a car from 0 to 60 in a few seconds, and they're on oxygen fairly quickly. And oxygen can be a blessing. It can also be a curse, because I'm on oxygen only when I exercise, or I have it at night when I sleep. Not that it's been prescribed for me at night, but I take it because I think I feel better from it. But I am prescribed when I exercise. I have to have a measurement of 6 liters of oxygen in flow, which is called high flow oxygen. So I'm not alone in this. I'm one of many. There's many that, like me, are living a full, rich life. There's many that are compromised and don't.
Wow. That's amazing that you have just survived and thrived. And so for you and those like you, this is an extremely scary time, because your world is different. Your world is kind of on a different, it's different in a different way, on a different level than it is just for a regular person who doesn't have any lung issues. Because we all know that this particular pandemic that we're in, lungs are a primary source, a target with this whole situation. So this is, it kind of puts a different spin on being safe and taking care of yourself. So for someone like you, people should be wearing their mask all the time, to help preserve and help you to continue to thrive and be able to get outside, except for I know it's hot there, so that doesn't help. But what lifestyle changes have you done to go to a thriving, to be able to have that from survive to thrive mentality and lifestyle?
Well, to take Bridgetti's words, to find my happy, in other words, and I find my happy every day. I think it's a valid, good point. The masking, I mask up when I go out. My wife masks up when she goes out. When we have excuse me, we have kind of a lifestyle change, obviously, because of this disease, where if the average person gets COVID or coronavirus, they have about a 1.5% to 2% chance of getting the disease and dying. Whereas in my community, it's much, much higher. And the numbers are a little vague. And I've seen numbers anywhere from 98% die to 20%. I'm not sure what the real numbers are, but the numbers, regardless, tell me to take every precaution I can, because I hit that risk category in a couple of ways. Number one, I'm older. Number two, I've got idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. I'm in my 9th year with that disease. I am on oxygen when I need it. Outside of that, I think that most patients that are living with this disease face unique challenges, because we can't take the risk of becoming sick, because our chances of survival are significantly reduced. So our way our life has changed, and it's changed in some ways that are subtle, other ways that are obvious. Example, we don't go to the movies anymore. We don't go out to a restaurant to eat. We'll get takeout if we do that. We might do that once or twice a month, if that. Everything else is from home. We find that we don't miss the things that we thought we would. We don't miss not having the opportunity to go out. We do miss meeting with our friends over a glass of wine or dinner, or going to the occasional movie, or going out to a nice restaurant for a nice meal. Simple things you don't really pay a lot of attention to become different and important. You get kind of bored looking at 4 walls all the time. But my treadmill's become my best friend, and I exercise every day, regardless, or try to. And I probably spend, I'd say, 40 minutes to an hour on the treadmill. I'm very active, for most patients can be, but sometimes you have to kind of push the envelope, because if you're not breathing well, and it's hard to get oxygen in your body, which is one of the things of this disease, you don't get oxygen. And it's not pleasant when you're being waterboarded 8 hours a day, and that's kind of the result of it. So you learn to live with it, or you cope with it in some other way. But I think my life hasn't changed that much, Mary. What's changed for me, I think, is my appreciation of what I have. It's like, I think sometimes patients, and maybe perhaps all of us, we focus so much on what we had that we don't really stop and think about what we have. And even though I might have had, as a triathlete when I was first diagnosed, I'm not going to knock out those 6-7 minute miles anymore, but I do a pretty good treadmill for 40 minutes, and I find happiness in that and joy. And it's like Bridgetti said, find your happy. I think it's a great way to look at living life. But in this disease, it's critically important, because it's so easy to affect your body and your progress in life, how you think, and how you live. And I think living in this disease is not a simple 25 words or less formula, but I think it is how you think about life, how you move, what action you take, how you eat, all those things combined, I think, make a life for all of us. And for a patient, a pulmonary fibrosis patient, we have to do it perhaps a little differently, with a different strategy, but we do the same things.
Right. So, Bill, apart from being able to get yourself into a good mental state where you can thrive and not just survive, you've also started PF Warriors. Tell us a little bit about PF Warriors, why you started it, and the work that you do with PF Warriors.
Well, quite simply, it has us back in the path, or the course of most people living with a disease like pulmonary fibrosis. I think when you're told you're going to die in a finite period of time, and my diagnosis that I had when I was given my diagnosis is I'd be dead in 2 years. That's a real strong motivator. You get motivated to do something. And what I did is I kind of poured myself into research. I mean, as I sit at my keyboards and talking to Dr. Google 7, 8, 9 hours a day, every day, I probably called close to 200 doctors around the world trying to find what I call the silver bullet, a cure that no one else had discovered before. I really investigated diet, all types, ended up following a diet that is kind of an, excuse me, this Sahara dust is getting to me a little bit. So I follow diets like the paleo diet, the ketogenic diet, and I go on the whole long list. thinking that was the course of action. I tried all kinds of exercise routines and explored kind of esoteric, if you will, ways of living, and comes back full circle. And 9 years out, my life has changed since I was first diagnosed, but it hasn't changed that much. It's different because I don't, as I said, I don't run the 6-minute miles anymore, but I do exercise and I do take care of myself. But I think the mental side of it is the hardest to control and manage. And we all manage those things differently. I manage mine in a combination of things. One is structure and organize my life and how I live. And my days start out pretty much the same every day, 7 days a week. Starts off, I get up early. I'm an early guy, and I come in, do a little puttering around in my office, do what I have to do. And I go out and make coffee for Patty and I. I'll take the coffee, and I make typically I'll make a cappuccino. She has a coffee, and take it into her, and we'll sit and talk for 15 minutes, half hour every morning. And then we'll go out in the front room. She goes and gets dressed a little bit, and we'll sit down and talk again for another 15 minutes to a half hour. We've been doing that now. We've been married 57 years. I'd say probably 50 of it we've been doing something like that. And I think it's one of the reasons we have the successful marriage we do, in part because we communicate. So that starts my day every day. And then after we go that, and before breakfast, we'll do a series of exercises that kind of look like Tai Chi, slow, soft movements, but more breathing, called Qi Kong. And I've been involved in martial arts forever. I mean, I spent close to 15 years studying various karate and all that stuff. I had actually a teacher at a dojo when we first got married, a karate teacher. So I've been involved in that world for a long time. And we do exercises. It takes about 20 minutes. We do our Qi Kong and we do meditation every morning. And then the day starts, and we kind of go our separate ways and come back together again for lunch and go our separate ways. At night, sit down and have a glass of wine. It's the same thing. We'll spend half an hour, give or take, talking about something, whatever it might be. We try to keep politics out of it. We try to counsel our children wisely, but recognize that they've kind of come through us, not to us. And so we encourage them to stand on their own 2 feet, which they do very well. And that's my life every day. During that time, during the day, I'll get on the treadmill and grind out my walking, race walking. I walk fairly fast, and go to the gym. Or now that I don't go to the gym, I have weights at home, and I'll do some weights, some basic exercises in addition to the Qigong I do, which is an exercise. So I think having structure your day is part of how you think about your day. So I go through a mantra every morning. And one of the, I think we've all been impressed by books. And probably there's 3 books that I look at as impacting my life. One is the Bible. And I'm not a religious person, maybe spiritual, but when I was a kid, my goal was in high school was actually I was going to be a minister. And then I joined the Marine Corps, and that all kind of changed and shifted. But so I read another book when I was actually just starting living after the Marine Corps, which was a change of my life, a changing point, I think. And one of the major points of my life that changed the way I live. And then I've read a book called Think and Grow Rich, a guy named Napoleon Hill, which first time I read it, I sat down and read it again, and I did that 3 times. By the time I got to the 3rd time of reading it, I kind of absorbed that methodology and that mantra of positive living. And then the last book I read that really impacted my life was Og Mandino's Greatest Salesman in the World. And he had a thing of 10 parables or sayings, or they called scrolls, in his book. And I repeat those scrolls 2 or 3 times a day, every day without fail. I do it when I'm doing my Qigong. I do it in my office when I first sit down before I actually hit my keyboard. And I do it at night when I'm winding down the day. And those things have guided me and maintained, I think, my attitude. So no magic, just kind of basic blocking and tackling.
Well, it's a perfect recipe because it has done for you It has done amazing things for you. So hopefully there are people watching who will see this. And I know you do. So what is your PF Warriors? And do you teach this to others as a
I've gone off
recipe?
the track in the question. I apologize.
No,
Good
no, no.
question,
This was
not a
all
good
really
answer.
good.
Let
This
me
was
answer.
all really important information that you're giving.
All right. Well, PF Warriors started out because as a patient, I wasn't finding the information I needed. I went through 4 different pulmonologists because I didn't believe I had this disease. Yet you have to keep in mind, when I was diagnosed 9 years ago, I was training for a triathlon. I'd get up every morning, I'd knock out 5, 6 miles, run. I'd come back and I'd swim 3,000 yards. I'd bike. I'd lift weights a couple times a week. I was in incredible shape. I was 72 years old, but I was blown away these young 50-year-old punk kids in the pool. So, so I say that with tongue in cheek. So I was really very healthy. And that morning I got diagnosed, I'd done my 5-mile run rather. And I was knocking out a 6-7 minute pace. And I come back and I did a swim. I swam at that time, I swam about 3,000 yards of workout. So I go to the doctor's office and he sat down and did some tests called a high resolution CT scan. And he says, well, Mr. Vick, we did your test and got the results. And I took Patty with me because I suggested to bring my wife so I wouldn't have to repeat things. I said, sure. So, we go down to the doctor and we're sitting in the car talking about dinner that evening and maybe the movie in the weekend, and totally oblivious to anything except living a good life. I'd hit that magic curve that many strive for, where I guess we call it semi-retired, meaning I wasn't really working, but I thought I did. It was a good life. I got the golden ring. I mean, we traveled extensively. We had a rich, good life. And so all of a sudden I'm sitting in his office and he looks at me and he says, well, your tests show that you have a disease called Idiopathic Pulmonary Fibrosis. I said, oh, okay, what's the deal? What do we do? He says, well, it's a disease with no cure. It means you're going to die in about 2 years. And with that, Patty just turned sheet white. I mean, I thought she was going to fall on the floor, just a shock like that. I kind of shook my head and I said, what? What are you saying?
Yeah, I'm Superman. What are you talking about?
Exactly right. I said, I can't be sick. I said, what? Tell me what's going on here. And he explained it at that time. I couldn't accept it. So we went home, had a glass of wine, talked about it a little bit. And I said at that point in time, I said, if I can do anything with the rest of my life, I'm not going to let anybody go through the same thing I just went through, of that shock and fear and uncertainty and anger, all combined and rolled into one. And so the next 2 years, I just poured myself into research. I attended events. I met with and talked to researchers. I became an educated patient. I probably knew as much about this disease as most of the doctors I talked to, maybe more with some. And I kept on going to doctors and I kept on talking to people about the silver bullet and found it didn't exist. I finally went out to a large hospital in Denver, Colorado called National Jewish Health, which is one of the largest hospitals in the world. Many people rate it as the #1 in the world for this particular disease. And I spent a week there, and it was on my own nickel, and it wasn't insurance covered. And 14,000 nickels later, I sat down with the doctor, and he said, "You've got IPF," and I believed him. So that was my awakening, if you will, if this is real. But I was about 3 years into it by that time because I was still running races. I was still feeling great. I had lost weight. I ended up losing about 27 pounds, and where I couldn't lose weight because when I was training, I was at about 7-8% body fat. So 20 some pounds for me from 163 to 143.
That's a lot.
Muscle mass. It wasn't excess fat or weight.
Right.
And so I think that the Warriors became born out of that idea of, as I went through, I was looking for the answer I couldn't find. And we created the PF Warriors. First meeting was 3 people, my wife, Patty, myself, and a nurse. We now encompass about 2,000 people worldwide.
Wow.
We're the largest support group of its kind anywhere by far. We hold 2 meetings a month, one of which was virtual. Now they're both virtual meetings. And they're attended by our speakers. It might be a doctor, a researcher. It might be somebody else on something else. but to educate and inspire. Those two things, educate and inspire. Because I think if you know something, you don't live in the same degree of fear as you might otherwise. So,
education is a must.
critical. It is.
Yes.
You're dealing, and you guys are dealing with compromised disease as well. And you have, if you know about it, you don't fear it. You know it's what it is, and you address it. And the second thing I think we try to do is inspire to action. Knowing something is good. Taking action is wonderful. And people sometimes know but don't do. Be that diet or be that exercise or be that mental attitude or whatever it may be. If you don't take action, so what? Knowing it is good. Doing something about it is even better. So we try to inspire people to take action, and we have a course for them to do that. We have produced our first book on the disease for patients. We're working on our second. The first one was a patient guide. Our second one is a caregiver guide, because I feel personally that our caregivers are kind of the unsung heroes of this whole disease. They do the heavy lifting. They do the real work. You know, like Patty keeps me in line. If I don't go to the gym or get on the machine, she reminds me not so gently I should, which I do. And I think our caregivers aggregately are the saints and the heroes to us, and sometimes they're not given due justice. So we're doing our second book on caregivers, and we're looking at expanding what we do to help more people and working with other organizations wherever we can. So no magic there, just a bunch of people that are living with a common disease that try to help each other. We're patients helping patients, and that's our motto.
Wow, you're so inspirational. And I think you found a sort of silver bullet in the combination of all that you're doing. And it takes that combination coming from all those different angles that's got you where you are right now.
Well, I think it's a lot of things, Mary. And to me, living life, whether you're sick or not, whether you have a terminal disease or not, it's basics. There's not a lot of magic there, but it all starts at how you look at life. You know, life is choices. It's the choices you make. I think our life is the sum of our choices. Sometimes we don't realize the choices we make aren't going to take us where we want to go. But if you don't know where you want to go, so what? I think the second thing that people miss is having a purpose and a goal.
That's absolutely true. Bill, unfortunately, we're running out of time fast. I could talk to you for hours. You've got so much pearls of wisdom to share, not just for people in the PF community, but I think, you know, a lot of what you shared applies to
all of
anyone
us.
else. You know, anyone living with any kind of challenge can draw some inspiration from that. If you had a message that you wanted to share with people, the community at large, and anyone living with a life-threatening disease, and the way we view and treat people with life-threatening diseases, what would that be?
3 words. 3 words. Do it now. Don't wait. I can't do things now that I could have done. I waited. Don't wait. Don't have a bucket list. Execute it and do it. Simple advice. Do it now.
Amen to that.
That is amazing. I think, you know, living in the now and not borrowing from the future, you know, because we can also borrow worry and unnecessary anxiety from the future. But if we focus on today, what we can do today, and not stress so much about tomorrow, we can find our happy.
Well, but Jenny, don't you think it's kind of like driving a car down a road? You don't spend all your time looking in the rear view mirror where you've been. And sure, you want to know where you're going, but sometimes you forget it's where you're sitting right now. And right now is our lift. Today may never come. Yesterday's gone forever, but we have right now. And if you don't make right now important, it won't be.
Right.
Right.
Bill, how can people connect with you and reach out, you know, and
support?
Do you, yeah. And do you encourage people in your PF warriors community? Are they people primarily with pulmonary fibrosis, or do you also allow people who are caregivers to join the community?
We have also families. There's actually 4 points, 4 pillars, if you will. One is the patient. That's our primary focus. Second is the caregiver. Third is the family, because sometimes we forget Like when you have a disease, a terminal disease, how do you tell your kids? How do you tell your friends? So they have to be part of the equation as well.
Right. Absolutely. It's a team effort. It's like raising a child who has special needs. It's a team effort.
Yep, absolutely. You understand that because you're living it. And people that haven't lived that need to understand that life is not infinite, it's finite. And you want to make your life the best you can, but it starts with you making it the best you can. As you have, Mary, you now write books. You found a whole new direction in life. In part, what some people might look at is a negative. You've made a very positive, as has Bridgetti, with all you do, with all the groups you're involved in. So I applaud both of you because you're living the example I'm talking about.
Hey, let's write a book together.
Well, thank you so much.
Not going to happen. It was, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Bill,
Well,
so
thank
much.
you.
Oh my gosh, you're such an inspiration. I mean, for any of us, I don't care what you're going through. I just even this COVID stuff, trying to parent through this, trying to keep everybody's mental health and well-being, and that's, this is not going to go on forever. But even just the formula that you have, it's prevalent to just about anything out there. So we just thank you for sharing your time and all your wisdom with us.
Well, it's been fun, actually. It really has been. I enjoy this. And again, I compliment you both. And Bridgetti, what you do, it's awesome. I'm just really, I think it's awesome.
It is what you, yes.
Thank you. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart, Bill. And thank you to everyone who's joined us live in the comments today. Really appreciated that. And if you found value in this and you think anyone else out there should be hearing this positive story, then please do share it with them. So from Cape Town in South Africa and from my co-host and
Tennessee and Texas.
Take care, everyone, and have a great day further.
Bye.